I, for one, am pumped to talk with you today. I got my copy.
Oh, yay.
I love everything about this book. You know, why you wrote it and the fact that you did and how amazing it is. And before we get to it, though, could you talk a little bit about your personal story and how you got into writing?
Yeah. Wow. Well, so how I got into writing was pretty much connected to the book is that after my nephew asked me that question, that really kind of inspired me to write the book. It was a letter that turned into an article. And then I started to give talks, like workshops in Los Angeles. But I've always had a fear of public speaking. And so I don't know if you've heard of Toastmasters, but it's Toastmasters is like a free, well, it's not free, but it's a small membership that you pay, and it's a club for public speaking. And so I used to go to this meeting near my house early in the morning on a Tuesday, but I didn't realize in order to give a speech, you have to write one. so, so that kind of is important. And so really that's how I started writing, was that so to be it's considered a competent communicator, you have to give 10 speeches and then you get like a little badge. Wow. And so I wrote basically 10 speeches, and those were kind of contents of the book. And so that's where I got, I guess, my start of writing, is that I felt like I had something to say. And so I didn't know how to like say that out loud. So I wanted to practice public speaking, but then you have to, like I said, you have to write a speech.
Right. Well, I mean, thank God you did that, because that led us to today. And you mentioned the question. For people who don't know what you're talking about yet, because they haven't touched the book, can you touch on that story a little bit?
Yeah, so this was back in 2015. I live in California, I live in Los Angeles, but I'm from Arizona. So I was actually in Arizona giving a workshop at Arizona Equality and Justice Conference, which is an LGBTQ conference. And so I say it's interesting to me because I was there to give this, to work at this conference, give a workshop. And then after that, I went to my mom's, and she had like a lot of family over and family friends. And my nephew at the time was 6. And so he just kind of innocently was running and playing with all the other kids. I have a huge family. And he ran over, and in his version of whispering, which was out loud, he asked, "Uncle Chris, is she your girlfriend?" This woman who was sitting next to me. And I just remember looking at everyone's reaction, and even my own reaction. I was really surprised, because I was like, wait, like I thought he would have already known that I'm gay. I mean, it never even occurred to me that he didn't know. I just assumed that he already knew that. Right. And so then that was really the question that was the impetus of this journey that I went on, because I started to ask around to families, to people I knew who had kids. And I was really surprised by this response that I was getting, which was like, "Oh, they're not old enough," or, I don't know what to say, which I talk about in the book, that I share, is that I knew that I was gay when I was 6. Right. So I'm thinking it didn't make sense to me. So that really is what set me out to write the book.
Yes, and it's such a great guide for people who maybe don't know how to have those conversations with their kids. So you mentioned your nephew was 6. What age would you recommend to start having those conversations with children?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I totally understand, because I think that one of the things that I write about in the book is like our apprehension for having certain conversations. And so really the book is kind of like my hope, my goal is that I can invite people to consider all the beliefs that we've all picked up, everyone, no matter who you are, about what sex, sexuality, gender, and kind of really looking at those, because oftentimes those are the very things and the reasons that we don't have conversations. So to answer your question, I think the earlier, the better. And really, I think for me, and this is what I often tell parents and caregivers, is a good measure of when to start having conversations is when kids start to ask questions.
Yes.
And so it's when they're asking the questions that they're curious. And so to help kind of facilitate that conversation. So 6 is not too soon to start having conversations about sex, sexuality, and in age appropriate ways, of course, because I also think what's important to consider is that oftentimes adults, we put our adult construct of sex and sexuality onto children. And so when we think we're talking to kids about sex or sexuality, it's our adult construct of that. Yeah. So it's kind of to shift. My goal, my hope with the book is to center children's experiences. So this is a children's version of sex, sexuality, gender.
Oh, I love that you did this, because I really do feel like this could obviously help so many parents, but really kind of like change the future, Chris, like change the way we view all these things. And, as you kind of mentioned, there's obviously adults now who didn't get to have these conversations with their parents as kids and maybe have this certain view of those things. Do you have any advice on how to talk to those people to give them maybe more of an open mind?
Yeah, I think books are really helpful. Not just, my book necessarily, but books in general. And so I really believe, and this is really kind of my passion, is that we teach through our demonstration. And so all of us are teachers, and parents especially. And so the conversations that parents, caregivers have, and the conversations that they're not having are really they're really impactful to young people. And so if a parent or adult caregiver is finding some discomfort, like, I don't know how to talk to my kid about this, and I want to talk to my kid about this, that's perfectly okay. Like, to even say that, I think is really important, and to be able to honor that, and then go out and explore, get some books, or there are many wonderful organizations out there that you can even, a parent or caregiver could even go to just to start getting information. And that's what I say in the book too, is that if you don't know how to have this conversation, there are really wonderful organizations out there that can help give you more information so that you can start to have the conversation, because it's not a one-time conversation. And it's not a one size fits all. And so it's really important that that these are conversations that are ongoing, and not just a one time, okay, I did it, I'm done.
Over, right.
Yeah, it's over. It's like let's revisit it.
Yep, for sure. And I think this book is not only a great tool for parents, but I think really just anyone who interacts with children, including teachers. Do you have any ideas or advice on how maybe teachers can implement some of these ideas into their classrooms?
Yeah, gosh, thank you so much for saying that, because that's really one of my hopes too, is that this can be, especially with back to school. Yes. I know every state is different in the United States as far as like what curriculum. I know in California, we're a little bit more progressive. Where I'm from in Arizona, they just passed a law recently that allows teachers to even talk about LGBTQ matters in school. Yeah, which is, kind of crazy, but, so there are like some states that do, in California here, they're doing LGBTQ teacher trainings. And so to answer your question, there are chapter 10 of my book, specifically, I give teachers, parents, kind of some actual like here are some exercises that you can do with kids to help start to facilitate, kind of moving the needle. Because really one of my hopes is that teachers especially can start to address and kind of be aware of heteronormativity.
Yes.
And so for those of your listeners who aren't necessarily aware of that term, heteronormativity, it's just the conscious or unconscious belief that informs your kind of lens of looking at the world, that, man, woman are kind of the construct that are that's normal, natural. And so even in classrooms, when a teacher gives an example, like, whether it's math or science, it's often used male, female, or, Billy's mom, wanted to talk to her dad, or, so even those little examples, I think it's really great for teachers to be aware. And so chapter 10 of my book, I give kind of examples of what teachers can do to start kind of allowing kids to see themselves in the classroom more.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited that not only do I have a copy for myself, but we actually have a few copies to give away. So we're going to
Wow.
do a little giveaway as well,
Aw,
Chris, which is going to be
yay.
super fun. And I
Aw,
know in addition to being an author, you're many things, including a spiritual life coach. I would
yes.
love to hear you talk about that work that you do too.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I really, it's kind of my heart's work. I love working with people because I really believe that spirituality is kind of, the term can be a little maybe like sensitive, but I really do believe that our life is calling us to live a purpose.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people think of purpose like with what they do in the world as like a job. And so, you know, my work with people often includes like discovering your purpose on more of a soul level. You know, what are your gifts? What is really your calling of how to be your best version of yourself? And that's your purpose. And it doesn't necessarily look like it can look like what you do as a job. Oftentimes though, it's really how you show up in the world. And so that's kind of what I work with people about, how to more authentically show up as their best selves.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
incredible. And I know people can find more information about that. You are at A Road Trip to Love. That's your website and your social media.
Yes, yes.
So with that being said, what does a road trip to love mean to you?
Oh, wow, gosh. Well, that could be a whole like other conversation, but really that started from my own experiences, that I believe our lives, all of us are on a road trip to love. And love could be love of self, love of another person, relationships. Sometimes people associate God or their version of a higher power with love. And so really, I believe that our whole life is a road trip or a journey of discovering that love of, you know, self-love, love in the world. And I don't mean that, I actually mean that literally. And so that's where Road Trip to Love kind of was born from. And that's what I believe that we're all on.
Absolutely. I agree. I love that. I mean, without love, what does any of this matter, really,
Right.
at the end of the day?
100%.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, in addition to the book and all the things you just mentioned, Chris, are there any other projects that you're working on that you're really excited about?
Gosh, you know, the book, it was just recently released in May. And so I think that is the main thing that I'm so, you know, they say that books are like your kids. And so I've heard that. And so I feel like this is like my kid, and, you know, it's starting school. And so I'm like talking to the teachers, and like, you know, that's what I feel like these conversations are. And so, yeah, so thank you for asking, but that's really my hope, is to help share the book's message, to inspire conversations.
Great. I saw you doing some book signings as well.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great. Do you have any more of those planned?
Not 100% sure, because just, you know, that happened because of COVID. Like now that things are kind of starting to happen, at least here in California, more openings, but hopefully, fingers crossed, that can happen more. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I know your fans are just dying to meet you in real life and have you sign the book. In fact, I have a question for you from a listener, if you don't mind. Let's
Of course.
see. They want to know, did you ever get bullied in school where you developed depression from it, or any other mental disorder? This person says they did for being openly gay. So that's why they're asking.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And thank you for asking that, because that's really what my hope with the book is, to prevent bullying before it begins. And yes, I was bullied, as a matter of fact, and I do write about that. And for me, bullying, when I started to get bullied, that's when I started to develop what I talk about in the book, which is really important: internalized homophobia.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people talk about it openly, because that's when I started to develop the messages that were like, I thought I was bad. I thought I was wrong. I thought I was something was wrong with me, and that's why I'm getting bullied. And so what I hope to do with the book is to shift the focus onto the society that creates the messages that would allow us to bully kids who don't look maybe like necessarily the societal what's considered norm.
Mhm.
So yeah, I did. I went through, and that's what I really believe too, is that we can use, like, I want to use my negative experiences for the sake of good.
Yes.
And so now that I'm on the other side, I'm able to share, what I went through and how I got through that.
For sure. Well, thank you for doing that, Chris, because, as you know, these life experiences can put us in one of two directions. It can put us in a downward spiral, or, as you're doing, using it for good. So that's really awesome. Love to see it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, last but certainly not least for you, Chris, here in the beautiful state of Maine, our state motto is the way life should be. So I want to know, according to you, what is the way life should be?
Oh gosh, that's beautiful. The way life should be is that we're all able to celebrate our individual unique expressions and not feel that it's different because we don't necessarily look like everyone else. So that's what I feel like the way life should be.
That's so perfect. And I mean, you depict that so well. I'll hold it up one more time. This beautiful book. Oh, gorgeous, stunning. We love it, Chris.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to give some away to some lucky listeners.
Yeah, thank you for...
Thank you. It was great to talk to you and get to know you, Chris.
Yeah, you as well, Haley. Thank you so much.
Until we meet again, take care of yourself.
Yeah.